Hello and welcome to Daf Yomi Ba'alacha. Today we're learning Be'ez Hashem Hilchos Yom Tov, Siman Tov Tzadi Ches, Seif Yud Ches, on page Kuf Yud Aleph. Tov Tzadi Ches, Seif Yud Ches. We've been discussing the halachos of Shechita and the halachos of Kisui Hadam. Shulchan Aruch has told us that when it comes to Yom Tov, with regard, a person should only shecht if a chay on oif, and chay on oif require some of the blood to be covered with either earth or with ash. And the halacha is one only shecht on Yom Tov, a bird or a chay, if one has prepared earth before or ash before Yom Tov. Although if one did shecht and transgress this, then if he has a deker notes, we discussed, if he has a spade inside the earth, also be permitted to use that. Otherwise, if he hasn't got that, he'll have to just wait till after Yom Tov. As we explained, there's issues involved of making a hole in the earth, an issue of muksa, an issue of crushing earth, etc. Now, there's an entity called a kvi, or sometimes known as a koi, chof vav yod. Now, this is a type of crossbreed, and the Gemara is uncertain exactly what its status is. Does it have a status of an animal? When an animal is not chayav kisei adam, there's no mitzvah to cover the blood of an animal. Or does it have the status of a chaya, a wild animal, or a bird which has got an obligation to have kisui hadam? Similarly, in line with this, the same question involves the issue of chaylev. Chaylev of behemoth is a koris, and chaylev, the fats, forbidden fats of a chaya, wouldn't be an issa koris. So therefore, we have to know the status, and we don't know the status. Says the Shulchan Aruch, we'll discuss Be'ez Hashem different types of kvi. Says the Shulchan Aruch, kvi, or koi as they called it here, Pirush Bria Shenolda Mitayashut Tzvi. Mishnah Berurah explains we're talking here about an entity, a being that comes out, which is born from a deer and a she goat, and they have a mazel tov, and this baby is queer. We're not sure exactly what it is. Is it a behemoth? Is it a chaya? Is it a behemoth, and therefore there's an issa chaylev? Or is it a chaya, and therefore there's an obligation to kisei adam? Says the Shulchan Aruch, ein shechting osib Yom Tov. One thing is for sure, don't shecht on Yom Tov, as we'll see in a moment. V'im shachtin, if a person did shecht on Yom Tov, ein mechasenes domoi, kisei adam is not done. That means during the week, a person can shecht such an entity, and one does kisei adam, because maybe it's a chaya which requires kisei adam. On Yom Tov, one shouldn't shecht it, because there's concern actually with regard to kisei adam, because if one did shecht it, one can't do kisei adam, as the Shulchan Aruch says, even if he does have earth ready prepared before Yom Tov to cover up such blood, he mustn't shecht it on Yom Tov, and if he does shecht it, he does not do kisei adam. Because somebody who sees it will say, if he sees you are covering the blood of this kvi, he'll take on its status definitely as a chaya. The fact you're doing kisei adam being on Yom Tov must be a chaya. Otherwise, why are you doing kisei adam on Yom Tov? And if it's a chaya, that means its chaylev is permitted. And therefore, the making, because otherwise, the fact we're doing kisei adam to it shows it must be a chaya. Otherwise, you wouldn't bother ourselves to kisei adam. You're doing kisei adam, must be a chaya. If it's a chaya, chaylev is mutar. Yavan has a chelboy. They'll come to eat the forbidden fats of this animal, of this being. But when it comes to Motzei Yom Tov, then at that point one can do the mitzvah of kisei adam on any remaining blood. The animal can be eaten if it was shechted, but just the kisei adam can't be performed. And ideally one doesn't do shechita before Yom Tov, because since it will be possible to do kisei adam properly, therefore we'd rather you didn't shecht it at all. Says the Shulchan Aruch, the dafka sheshachted b'kerem zobes or chaygam. This concern is only when it's being shechted in a corner somewhere. If it's being shechted in the middle of a chotzer, any animal can be shechted in the middle of a place where there would be blood would be unexpected and undesired, to have a kagraf rate, because the removal of it is the same as the removal of something we discussing which is permitted, and similarly one can cover it up. Since one made a mess, it's expected and normal, at least it was in the times of Chazal, to cover up such a mess of blood if it's in a place that people frequent. It will be obviously needed just to make the area usable and user friendly, to cover up with earth, and therefore from what shecht kvi in such a place where it will be expected that you wouldn't leave its blood out simply because it's dirty and unpleasant. So therefore one could, in such a situation, to kiss at that point, the people would assume that the reason it's being done, it is being done in order just to cover over the unpleasant, unsightly blood, but not to fulfill the mitzvah of Kisei Adam, and therefore they would never conclude that animal is actually a chaya and come to eat from its chaylev. Let's take a look at the Sif again with the Mishnah Berurah. Again, koi. Now, the Mishnah Berurah says that this example of a koi, the brackets over here is telling us is a mix, a breed between a deer and a she-goat. The Mishnah Berurah says yesh oid min koi. There's another type of koi, shu beri bifnei atzma, which is actually an animal, an entity that, or a being which came into being. It just came into being from any other type of mixture. Somehow or other, this animal came into being, which is unsure if it's a chay or behema. Also, it has the dinim of, we give the chumras of both. That meaning the Torah kisei adam, it needs kisei adam like a chaya does, or for chelben also a behema, and it's forbidden fat, forbidden like an animal. So even if it wasn't actually born from these two, from the deer and the she-goat, nevertheless it could still have a situation of a koi. Now there are brackets over here, and I must again stress the brackets most probably are not from the Ramah. It's from some additional commentator who decided to help us along and tell us that this koi is an example. Over here is the tzvi with a tayish. Now the truth is that Mishnah will explain. Talking here, a deer went with a she-goat. If a he-goat went with a doe, which is a female deer, although in such a situation its fat is forbidden, nevertheless, it's clear that since the mother is a chaya, that for sure it has the dinim of a chaya and it needs kisei hadam. The question is, does it also have the issues of its father, meaning, and therefore it would have the din of a behema. Again, it's clear that there's a distinct that it's one thing is for sure, that the entity takes on the status of its mother, of its maternal status. The question is, are we also chayshish for a paternal status? So, for example, in our sif, the question is only relevant when we are discussing a tzvi with a tiyosha, with a she goat. Now, a she goat, that means the primary parent, the primary element of this creation, this koi, is its mother's. That's the primary. That's the assumed the status quo status. The question, does it also have the status of the father? And therefore, the case of Shulchan Aruch is where one has a she goat, and which is animal, and then therefore the status of the animal chaylev is definitely also. The question is also, does it have the status of the tzvi, which is the father, and do we say it needs kisei adam as well, which is the subject of our case? If it will be the other way around, meaning that the mother was a tzivia, was definitely a chaya, so therefore for sure has a din of a chaya, it must have kisei adam. The question is only, it's chaylev also, and therefore in our sif, when one sees that the kisei being done, if one were to see the kisei being done, the blood being covered of a product from a tzivia, from a doe with a he-goat, one would not make any assumptions with regarding its status of chaylev, because one knows that of course it has to have kisei adam, because its mother is a doe, and therefore it definitely has the status of chaylev. The question, does it also have the status of behema? That would be the discussion. Okay, ein shechted is of yontif. So this koi is not to be shechted on yontif. Why? Shahari, because the yefshel has a dom ad yontif. One can't do kisei adam to it until after yontif. V'shema yisbala b'karaka, maybe by that time the blood will be absorbed in the ground. V'lo yeshumanika, there won't be any apparent leftovers of this blood. Vivatal mitzvahs kisei, and kisei adam won't be able to be done. Since you can't do kisei adam to on yontif for the reason the Shulchan Aruch says, don't shecht it at all. Says the Mishnah Berurah, Sif Cotton, Tzadi Hey. Even if one has earth prepared, even if you prepared it specially for covering the blood of this animal stroke chaya, Yeah, nevertheless, one doesn't shecht it. I'm but slach. The slach has an interesting opinion. He holds the dafka bekoi sheber b'fnei atzmai. This whole concern is not like the brackets explain the koi. We're talking about a tzvi, a deer which came on a she goat, but rather it's discussing a situation when one has a creature, wherever it may have come from, regardless of where it comes from. It has both features of a chaya and a behema, and then the halachas of our sieve apply. Have benoided mitzvah abarat yasha, but the case which the brackets over here suggested that the sieve is talking about, when it comes from a deer with a she-goat, if you designate specifically before Yontav likisuye to cover it with earth, mutar Yontav, you are allowed to shecht it on Yontav. The reason being that since its mother, since the mother over here in our sieve is a she-goat, for sure everybody knows that the chaylev is also, and therefore nobody would make such a mistake. Mashenkin a very bifnei atzmai, which sincerely we simply do not know its status, so therefore a person could make a mistake, and then that's why this sieve would, the dinim of the sieve would apply. Okay, sieve cotton tzadi zayin, tzadi vav imnei sheharoya. So why can't you cover over? Why can't you shecht and then cover over the blood of this kvi? Surely during the week one would do so, because perhaps it is a chaya. His father is a chaya. Perhaps it should also be choshesh for the first paternal status. Says the Mishnah Berurah, because otherwise if one would cover the blood on Yom Tov, one would say this is an absolute chaya. Why else would they permit covering its blood on Yom Tov? So Chazal have the power to annul a mitzvah act where a person just tell a person to be passive rather than to do a mitzvah. Because I say, in order to avoid any concern that a person may come to eat the chaylev, the forbidden fat of this animal, which is absolutely forbidden because its mother is a she-goat, which is a behema. So therefore they said, you know what, don't do kisei adam on Yom Tov, don't even shecht it in fact. Well, erev in the evening, if there's still leftovers from the blood, then cover it over. Already done is in Shnei Yom in Chutz La'aretz, but there's 2 days of Yom Tov. So I'll hand in bekisei ad motzi Yom Tov sheni, or would have to wait till the end of second Yom Tov to cover this blood, if there's anything left of it. Afilo dam behema, says the Ramah. Now, the whole discussion is with regard to covering over the blood of a kvi. Says the Ramah, even blood of an animal you can cover if you have a mess. Now, of course, there's no mitzvahs kisei adam with an animal. Says the Mishnah Berurah, mashma de kolshkin dam kvi mutar lechasas. Can you even cover the blood of an animal, and all the more so dam of a kvi? Well, dam of a kvi would have thought is more of a concern because there's a concern a person may come to eat the chaylev. But if you cover the blood of an animal, nobody's going to suggest that since we're already covering this animal, we're going to think it's a chaya. No one will think a behemoth is a chaya. Says the Mishnah Berurah, that's not the intent of this line. Says the Mishnah Berurah, mashma the kolshkin came down kvi to mutar lechasas. It sounds like there's more reason to permit covering the blood of a kvi. Of course not. Given the belav mitzvahs kisei, it's tzarich lechasas mishum mios. It's mashma that will more so the blood of a kvi is permitted to cover, because anyway, because he means that because even without the, rather it means that because even without the mitzvahs kisei, you need to cover the blood of an animal because it's dirty. Therefore, there's no reason to say we shouldn't cover the blood of this kvi. So when people say just like with a behema, the blood can be covered, so a person won't come to have the disconvenience and they have to have this blood in the middle of his chotzeh. So too, even a kvi can also be covered. I Magen Avraham from beside the Magen Avraham, he takes on the ein lahakol bazel lechasas rakecha shemechavim be'emes v'shur shlo yisach v'chukedav. Magen Avraham says covering over the blood which is from the shechita of a kvi in the middle of a chotzeh, and saying that the reason it's being, people would say it's being covered just to clean the area, not for the mitzvahs kisei adam, is only permitted if actually you are concerned with the mess. However, if your whole intent is only to do kisei adam, also Magen Avraham prohibits it. If one has earth prepared, one can use it to cover this blood which is in the middle of the chotzeh. Off of this tam, as we said, for example, in the Sif Yud Zayin, the person before Yom Tov designated earth. He brought in earth from outside, or he designated earth to cover excrement. If it's designated for these purposes, it's also designated for the kisui purposes. Tavaliki graf sharei is because when one has a mess in the middle of a chotzer, it's expected he'll cover it. Is generally covered, so therefore the Ramah is saying that if one does a shechita in the middle of a chotzer, and Magen Avraham says only if he's actually planning also to clear the area as well, so then he'll be allowed to cover the area with earth, cover the blood with earth, and fulfill the mitzvah of Kisei Adam thereby on this kvi that really shouldn't have been shechted because of the prohibition to shechter on Yom Tov, because a person won't be able to Kisei Adam and had to forbid Kisei Adam, because if Kisei Adam will be permitted, people think that this animal is a chaya, like this father status, not only a behemoth like his mother status, and they will say that it's a chaya so much so that the chaylev is going to be permitted. Thank you, Bimatzliach.